journalist Jamie Moore, the Core Outdoor Speaker Series. Once a month, Core offers this free online webinar to stoke inspiration and to share valuable information in the outdoor rec tech space. Today, we'll be hearing from Venturing Up owner James Friedrich. James has worked with thousands of products and hundreds of companies, including MEC. He's going to tell you about a roadmap he developed for successfully launching and scaling a product-based business. He calls it the Gear Launch System. And it's exactly the information he wishes he had back when he first got started in this kind of work. I'm going to turn it over to James. After he's done presenting, stick around. We'll have a chance to ask him some questions in a Q&A.
All right, Jamie, thanks for the intro. I see a few familiar names in this on the Teams link here, so I'm excited to talk to everybody, excited to be here today. I'm going to share my screen and then we will get started. So hopefully you can see that okay. Maybe Jamie, you could give me a thumbs up that that's all good.
Yeah, it looks great, James.
Okay, right on. Well, I'm stoked to be here. Like I said, my goal today is to deliver you some information about supercharging your success in your product-based business. And what I want to start off with is talking about, the number of entrepreneurs I talk to and people I talk to. What I hear is that people's desks are cluttered. They've got a lot of things on their plate, often balancing a part-time job or a full-time job or a part-time job along with building their side business. And what I also hear is that people are getting pulled in a lot of different directions. They feel like there's all these gurus out there telling them to go this way or that way, or just a lot of confusion on where to go. And at the end of the day, that can all leave you a little bit feeling frustrated or not knowing where to go. And what I'm hoping to be able to do today is kind of clean some of that up. I want to clean off your desk, give you a fresh start, a fresh perspective. I want to give you hopefully a clear direction or path that you can follow. And instead of feeling confused, I'm hoping that I can get you feeling calm and confident. So that's my goal today. And I'm excited to try and do that with you today. So who am I? My name's James Friedrich. Jamie gave me a bit of an introduction there. I have a consultancy, Venturing Up, where I work with early stage entrepreneurs helping to grow their businesses. I'm also a senior merchant with MEC, where I manage a $60 million product portfolio. I work with some of the biggest names in the industry like the North Face, Arc'teryx, and Patagonia. But I also work with probably about 100 other smaller companies. And I've worked with thousands of products and I've seen the behind the scenes success and failure of many different companies and products. But that wasn't always the case. And in fact, before working for MEC, I worked for a company in the city called Mustang Survival, and I designed and developed. I was a product development engineer, later a product manager, and I designed and developed hundreds of products, as well as being involved with multi-million-dollar product launches. But well before that, I started off my career as a maker. This is a picture of me. I think I'm about 14 or 15 years old. It was the 90s, so you can date me a little bit there. But I wanted super baggy pants. I was really into the super baggy pants, and you couldn't buy them at the time. So what was my option? I decided I was going to make them. And I cut two pairs of pants apart, sewed them together in the middle. They did not turn out well at all, but but that experience of making something kind of lit a spark in me, and I continued to go down that path and continue to design and make clothing. And this is me with a pair of custom snowboard pants that I had made for a friend. Later, as I continued on that journey of kind of making, my passion was snowboarding, and I transferred that clothing design and eventually decided I wanted to try and make snowboards. So together with a very close friend, we started our own snowboard company called Class 5 Snowboards. And that was a company that we grew to sell both direct to consumer and through wholesale in Western Canada. And it was a company that I really poured my heart and my soul into. And if you've ever poured your heart and soul into something that hasn't worked out, it can be really challenging. And ultimately, that business was a failure, and it left me emotionally and financially and mentally pretty shattered coming out of that experience. And to be honest with you, it's probably the reason why I'm standing here or sitting here talking to you today, because that experience, that pain that I felt going through that really lit a spark in me to try and understand how can I learn how to make repeatedly make and bring successful products to market? How can I help others who to avoid the pain that I felt with that experience? And so from that time forward, I've been through all the products I've been working on, the businesses I've been working with. That's where I've developed the gear launch system that Jamie was referencing earlier. So the gear launch system is really a process that I've refined over the years of bringing hundreds of different products to market. And it's the path that I believe can bring new companies to 100K and beyond. So what we're going to be doing today is going through some highlights and some details from that system. But before we do that, I wanted to just quickly touch on an exclusive offer that I'll bring up again at the end. And that's a workshop that I'm offering to the core members, the people on this call and other core members. I'm calling it the 1 day to 100K gear launch workshop. So it's a unique workshop. It's going to be on Saturday, April 6th in Nelson at the Nelson Innovation Center. And I'll tell you all about the details at the end, but I just wanted to let you know about it now that we'll be talking about that, and there's going to be a unique offer for you to take advantage of. So how do we supercharge the success of your business? How do we take advantage of this gear launch system that I've been talking about? Well, there's three key roles in the gear launch system. There's the entrepreneur, the maker, and the marketer. And the way I'm framing up this conversation today is by talking about kind of the key aspects of each of those roles. Now you see 4 boxes on the screen, and what I'm going to do is make a little entrepreneur sandwich here by starting with the entrepreneur and your brand development and ending with the entrepreneur as the CEO. And we'll touch on the maker and the marketer in the middle. So we're going to dive in. So the first step is talking about the entrepreneur as the brand. Working at MEC, I get to deal with a lot of different companies. And one of the big names in the outdoor industry is Patagonia. And Patagonia is a key supplier for duffel bags. If you're familiar with the Black Hole duffel bag, it's an amazing product in the marketplace. And we do really well with that product. Now, in the early days of COVID, there was massive supply chain disruptions. The container shortages, and people couldn't get product in and out. And that same thing happened with Patagonia, and they were unable to get their duffel bags shipped. So we were forced to kind of look for other options. And we found a product from another brand that was arguably as good or better at a lower price. So we brought those in, hoping that we could replace some of the sales from Patagonia. But it just wasn't the case. The product, even though it was amazing, nobody wanted to buy it. But later that year, when Patagonia was able to resupply, the sales shot back up again. And in fact, Patagonia even put in later that year a 25% price increase, and sales didn't miss a beat. And what that that story really highlights is the power of the brand. And in terms of Patagonia, they're a brand that takes a very strong position in the market. You can see this language here. We're in the business to save our home planet. Patagonia wears their values, shows their values outwardly. As a result, they attract their external values, attract external results. So how can we use this story of Patagonia and other brands like this to our advantage in our own small businesses? Well, the first thing is, what is a brand? It's pretty easy to think that a brand might be something like McDonald's or Starbucks, something that exists kind of like outside of any one person. But in reality, when we're thinking about a small business, that just isn't the case. And in fact, a brand is a little something different. And I would argue in a small business or a small startup, the brand is actually you. It's your strengths, your weaknesses, your passions, and your values. What we need to do is be able to align ourselves internally so that we can create an external result. Another way of thinking about it is that a brand is really a filter. It's a filter for what you're going to say yes to but more importantly, it's a filter for the things that you're going to say no to. And so we want to be able to build our brand and use it as a filter in that way. So how do we go about doing that? There's three kind of key components to building your brand, which is like the first is why. What are you deeply passionate about? The second is your strengths. What are your unique gifts? What are you uniquely gifted at? And the third is money. What can drive your economic engine? And if we can use these to build a brand, then we can use that as a filter to judge opportunities against. I'm going to highlight an exercise here. If people came to my core talk at the conference earlier in October, they would have heard me mention the bright spots exercise. What I find with so many people is that we have these strengths that we're not even aware of. There's things that are so strong enough that we can't see them, and that's a bright spot. And so what the bright spots exercise is a way for you to uncover those strengths and be able to recognize them and use them in your own business. So there's a simple exercise for doing that. It's called the bright spots exercise. You email 8 to 10 people, family members, friends, past colleagues, friends, etc., and you ask them this one simple question, which is, tell me about a time you thought that I was acting at my best or at my peak, and what strengths was I using? First of all, you get a bunch of awesome responses of people telling you how great you are. So it's an awesome ego boost. But the other thing that's really interesting is you can collect and analyze the feedback. You can look at the trends that appear, and it can make you aware of some things that you may not have been aware of for strengths in your own life. So to summarize this section, as an entrepreneur building a brand, what is a brand? Well, the brand is in fact you, and we want to use it as a filter. We want to create your why, understand your strengths, as an example, by doing the blind spot exercise, and have a path to making the money. All right, we're going to move on our sandwich here into the maker, which is creating value. How do we go about creating value? I'm going to take a little sip of water. I mentioned earlier in the talk that I worked at Mustang Survival, where we designed marine kind of safety and performance equipment. While I was there, we embarked on a project to create a line of sailing outerwear as well as base layers and other accessories for sailing. Now, I wasn't a sailor, and before getting into that project and diving into it, this was the image I had of sailing. You know, beautiful sunset, calm waters, having maybe a glass of wine or something on the deck. But going into that project and trying to understand the people that were actually sailors uncovered a whole new perspective for me. And really what I found is that the sailors that we were targeting, the ocean racing sailors, had a very different experience. So here's an example of what someone who's involved with sailing ocean racing, what their day might look like. There's no wine glasses on the deck of this boat, I can tell you that. And working with those sailors and understanding their problems was a real eye-opening experience. And I remember one conversation in particular when I was talking to a sailor, a racing sailor, about our base layer that we were designing. And he had gone and used it on a recent race. And he made a comment to me. He said something along the lines of, I really like this base layer. It sleeps dry really well. I was like, sleeps dry? That's like a really funny thing. Like, what does that mean? So I asked him, like, well, what do you mean by sleeps dry? And he said, oh, well, when we're racing on the boat, we don't have like a change of a base layer. I don't even bring extra clothes. I sail in conditions like what you see on the screen here. And then when it's time for me to go to sleep, I just take my dry suit off and go to sleep in my wet base layer, and I sleep it dry. So when I wake up in the morning, it's dry. And that insight totally changed my perspective on how wet the conditions are for sailing ocean racers. And it changed the way that we designed and how we went after products. So how are we going to create value? So there's 3 steps. which I kind of illustrated in my story. The first is understanding your target. Who are you going after? The second is understanding what problems that target market has. And once you understand the target and the problems, then you can build solutions for them. It's a little bit like planting a garden. If I was going to plant a garden and I just threw a random assortment of seeds down on the dirt, I wouldn't, how is my garden going to be successful? I'm going to be much more likely to get strong plants and flowers and fruit if I'm particular about which seeds, aka the target that I'm going after, planting them in a particular way, giving them, feeding them the proper sun, putting them in the right position, giving them the proper watering and sun. And then those seeds are going to grow and bear fruit. And that's the same with us. We want to be able to think about our target, how we're going to the solutions that are the problems that they have and the solutions that we can create for them. So, target market. The message here is if you design for everyone, you'll end up designing for no one. Instead, what we need to do is niche our target. By niching down on our target, we're going to increase our focus, which increases our relevance, which also increases our likelihood of success. One of the best ways I've found to kind of um, as a shorthand to be able to like niche down and define your target is this using a concept called schema. A schema is a fancy cognitive framework to organize and interpret information, but really what it is just using a combination of things that are already available, like shorthand references that are already available, such as brand names are really good ones, like Whole Foods, or age ranges, occupations, mothers, students, things like that, or any other like readily available description that's already loaded with a lot of information. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say we're designing a product and our target is new moms. We might think, great, new moms, it's a super broad target market. We're going to easily be able to have a product that's successful. But there's so many new moms out there in different demographics, different economic statuses, and so on. It's actually a huge market, and our message might not cut through the clutter. If instead we went and said, you know what, we're going to target new moms who shop at Whole Foods and also shop at Lululemon. When I add those two words of Lululemon and Whole Foods, you can probably already start to have a picture in your mind of what that person might look like. And in fact, I asked AI to draw that person. And before going on, I'll just highlight this sheet here. I'm going to include a free bonus at the end of the schema for you. So you don't have to take notes on this. So I asked AI to draw Lululemon, the new mom who shops at Lululemon and Whole Foods. And here's the drawing. And what I found really interesting about that is it's kind of the person in some degree that you're thinking of probably in your mind. And that's the power of schema. It's that shorthand reference that packs a lot of information and it could allow you to really design products specifically for someone. The second thing is the problems. So we want to discover the pain that our target has. And there's a number of ways to do that. We can experience them. We can experience the problems firsthand. Like we can go out and try the activity. We can interview people like I did when I was talking to those ocean racing sailors. We can observe them. We can do some research and we can do surveys. But the most important thing on uncovering problems is the mindset that you take to it. And it's really a mindset of curiosity versus judgment. If we think about us in the outdoor industry, a lot of us are designing products for activities that we ourselves take part in, maybe activities that we're really passionate about. And sometimes with those activities, we can have a certain perspective, which means we might be bringing judgment to our conversation or to our research. And we want to remove all that judgment and instead replace it with curiosity because that feeling, those feelings that you have about your own personal activity really aren't beneficial when we're trying to uncover the problems. So come with a mindset of curiosity and not judgment. Once we have the target, we understand the problems, then we can dive into solutions. But there's a key note here, and that's the thing, that is that not all solutions, not all problems are worth solving. We really want to be using our brand as a filter. Does solving that problem align with our why? can take advantage of our strengths, and will solving that problem make us money? Another quick note on problem solving. I often see people, and I've experienced this many times on different product development projects, is that the first concept that we come up with, we feel like we should pursue that to the end. And there's this idea that I have, which is called the first idea is your worst idea, which is really about innovation is iteration. The faster and more often we can innovate or iterate, the more innovative our ideas can be. And the more we're open to change through the design process, the more successful our product can be. The picture that I'm showing here is from Osprey's Design Center in Vietnam. And Osprey is an amazing company that really embodies this philosophy. And in fact, they built a design center in Vietnam specifically with the goal of being able to iterate the maximum number of times within a product development cycle so that they can create what they believe is the most innovative products. So, quick summary on the maker. How do we grow a thriving garden? Well, we want to define our target market using schema, discover your customers' problems, use curiosity, not judgment, and build solutions. Filter those through your brand. And remember, not all problems are worth solving. And finally, innovation is iteration. Your first idea is often your worst idea. Keep innovating and iterating. All right, we're going to move on to the marketer selling products. So years ago, when I started my snowboard business, I committed the problem that I see so many other people commit to. I was so infatuated with my ability to design and create snowboards that I wasn't as focused on the sales and marketing. And I've seen the same problem exist for so many other people. They're so solutions focused that they missed out on the marketing and sales component. It's a little bit like a bodybuilder who's skipping leg day. So focused on building that huge chest that they end up being chicken little on the bottom. And the challenge with that is that almost every failed company has a product, but most failed companies not have, they don't have enough sales. So what do we want to do about that? The answer is we want to build a funnel because your venture doesn't become a business until you've mastered the art of consistently attracting new customers. And one of the most powerful analogies I'm aware of for customer attraction is this idea of stoplight customers. So we're all aware of what a stoplight is, green, yellow, red. But we can apply that analogy to customers. So the first type of customer is the green light customer. They're the customer that hears about your product, and the second they hear about it, they're ready to buy. They're excited to jump in. The second type of customer is the red light customer. It doesn't matter how much you talk about your product, how much work you do, the red light customer is never going to purchase. Most of the marketing in the world today is focused on the green light customer, focused on that person who's ready to purchase today. But that's really just a small percentage of the people who buy. Think about your own purchasing decisions. How many times do you see something for the first time and immediately go and make a purchase? The group of people that we want to be focused on are the yellow light customers. Those are the people who are interested in what you're selling, but they just might not be ready to purchase today. We want to be nurturing those people along to for when they're when it's time for their purchasing decision, so they can when they convert to green light customers, we're the company that they purchase from. And if you think about your own purchasing decisions, you can probably put yourself into one of those boxes or into one of those groups, red light, green light, or yellow light right now with some purchases you might be thinking of. So the whole goal of a funnel then is really about focusing on that yellow light customer. So there's three stages. How do we find people? How do I find people? Sorry. How does my business find people that have never heard of me? How do I nurture customers until they're ready to buy? And finally, how do I transact with customers when they're actually ready to buy? So I have a slide here which has a bunch of details on each of those things. And I'm going to include this as a free bonus as well, because there's so much in here. But I'll just briefly go over. For how customers can find you, we often feel like there's only a few avenues. Maybe there's advertising, or maybe there's some other ads, but really there's so many different ways. And we want to be able to do stuff that's totally aligned with our brand. For nurturing customers, this is using things like an email list, social content, community building, retargeting events, or maybe free trials to nurture customers along your path. And finally, how do we transact? Well, there's two big channels for transaction. Those are direct to consumer sales through your online or using wholesalers selling to retail. But there's also other channels too, like pop-up shops, trade shows, catalogs, or maybe even direct and telemarketing. My point in showing this whole list is that there's a lot of options, and sometimes we can feel like there's only a few. And by making you aware of all these options, the important thing is that you can be aware of all the ways that your unique skill set can be applied to your business. So in showing you all those options, there might be a tendency to be, hey, I want to do them all because that's going to be my greatest likelihood of success. But we want to keep it simple. We want to choose one or two from each of those categories and use your brand as a filter. Does it align with your why? Can you use your strengths? And will it make you money? And finally, kind of starting back at the beginning when I was talking about my story, we want to use the 50-50 rule. Spend 50% of your time on product, but spend 50% of your time on marketing. It can be hard to kind of pull yourself away from the product, but the more time you can spend in there, the more likelihood your business will succeed. So to kind of sum up the marketer, we want to build a funnel, keep it simple and filter it through your brand. We want to have a way for customers to find us, nurture those yellow light customers, and finally transact. And remember the 50-50 rule. Spend 50% of your time on marketing and 50% of your time on product. Okay, we're almost coming to the end here. We're going to the the entrepreneur or the CEO of the company. So if you saw my core presentation at the core conference in October, I talked about Osprey. And Osprey is probably the global leader in backpacks right now. And looking at them today, you might assume that it's been smooth sailing for that company. But in fact, the story is very different. Mike Pfotenhauer, the founder of Osprey, spent 30 years getting the company to be above $1.5 million in revenue. And then in the last 20 years, the company's been around for 50 years. In the last 20 years, that's when the company's really skyrocketed. And the important lesson here is that Mike was able to make his company persevere for 30 years before it had its success. The graph I'm showing you on this page is the failure rates of new businesses over time. So in the first year, about 20% of new businesses fail. By the second year, around 30% have failed. Third year, 50, and so on. And you can see that this graph is kind of depressing. I put a skier on it to try and make it less depressing, but it's still pretty depressing. But our lesson from Osprey and from other businesses is that over time, you can see the graph starts to flatten out. And really what that talks about is the business is a game of attrition. The longer you can stay in the game, the greater your chance of success. And the Osprey story is perfectly illustrates this. So we want to give ourselves the greatest chance of success to iterate and innovate and figure this out. And in a product business, the biggest challenge is that cash flow. Good businesses with poor cash flow will fail. And in a product business, the biggest drain on your cash is your inventory. So here's the attrition equation. Managing inventory equals improved cash flow equals staying in business longer, which equals success. So managing your inventory is going to equal success. So here's the barriers that I see to a lot of inventory management. Increasing inventory to capture upside. So, thinking you can sell more, so you increase the number of units you have. Hesitating or delaying on orders because you're worried about something, so you don't end up actually bringing the inventory in. Or trying to take advantage of volume discounts. All of these things come down to worrying about getting the right amount. And one of the biggest things I've learned as a buyer is that I am always wrong. It's a mindset that has totally changed things for me. By understanding that I'm always wrong, I can shift my planning from getting it right to planning how I'm going to be wrong. Because no matter what you do with inventory, you're never going to pick the perfect amount. All those people who ordered products to land at the beginning of 2020 when COVID hit had a big surprise on their hands as the market totally shifted. And every year there's shifts taking place. So, how do we be wrong? We want to break POs into multiple smaller POs if possible. And POs are purchase orders. Reduce the number of products that we have in our business, have the simplest product line possible. Negotiate smaller minimum order quantities or MOQs and be totally okay with paying surcharges, especially in the beginning of your business. And if you sell out of your product, just sell out and be stoked. You can capture upside later. So, to kind of wrap this up, the attrition equation. Always being wrong equals managing inventory. Managing inventory equals improved cash flow, equals staying in business longer, equals success. And I've mathematically proven that always being wrong equals success. So there you go. I want to make one quick note. All the things I was just talking about, you could say, hey, those are all cost increases, breaking POs into smaller quantities, paying surcharges, things like that. Those are all going to be increasing my cost. And that's true. But the number one point of leverage that you have in your business is your price. If you followed along on all the steps that we've talked about so far, you've aligned the business to your strengths. You've created unique value and you've communicated that value to the marketplace. And now it's time to charge what that value is worth. And if you're interested in a resource to do that, I wrote a short book called Pricing for Profit, which is all about increasing your revenue, improving your cash flow, and growing your profits through value-based pricing. And I'll include that as a bonus today as well, so that everyone can have a copy of that. So to wrap up this section, success is a game of attrition. The longer you stay in business, the greater your chance of success. Cash is king. Be wrong and manage your inventory. And your number one point of leverage is your price. Take advantage of the pricing for profit exercise. All right, to summarize what we've gone through today, supercharging your success. As an entrepreneur, you need to develop your brand. Remember, the brand is you. Create your why, understand your strengths, and have a clear path to making money. As a maker creating value, grow a thriving garden. Define your target market, discover the problems, and build solutions. And remember, not all problems are worth solving, and that innovation is iteration. As a marketer, you need to sell that value, build a funnel, keep it simple, find, nurture the yellow customers, and transact. And remember the 50-50 rule, 50% of your time on marketing and 50% of your time on the product. And finally, as an entrepreneur or the CEO, success is a game of attrition. Cash is king. Be wrong and manage your inventory. And remember your number one point of if anyone has questions, I think you could probably just come off mute or feel free to type them into the chat. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. And yeah, just come off mute or enter them in the chat and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and don't be shy. Come off mute. We'd love to see your face and hear your voice. Maybe while people are thinking, I know that, well, first of all, I love the bright spots exercise. I think we should all do that. Looks like we've got Jean-Francois with the question. So we'll go ahead and take that one.
Just, I was curious to know what you meant about pricing power. Do you mean that one should increase the price to build value, or decrease the price? It seemed to be left ambiguous to me.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, you want to have, but with value-based pricing, you want to be articulating the value that you've created in your products and charging the appropriate value for that. Often with most entrepreneurs I work with, that's typically increasing their price. And there's a system in the pricing for profit book that goes through how to kind of be aware of the market value of your goods and be able to price them appropriately to your value. But typically what I find is a lot of entrepreneurs underprice because they're not articulating their value.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else got some questions out there?
I know one thing that I was curious, like I said, there's a lot of actionable, detailed information in there, but if we could kind of take it up a couple levels, I'm really curious what your opinion is on, what's the most common misgiving or mistake or misinterpretation that people have when they're first starting out?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I see is usually that challenge, the same challenge that I face myself, which is that there's a intense focus on product, and that the sales and marketing component is often one that gets missed. And that's one of the like, or maybe just considered for later. And that's an area of big focus of just trying to like crack that nut, because it's actually at the end of the day, it sounds a little silly to say this, but at the end of the day, often I think the sales and marketing is the harder part versus the creating the product. I'm gonna just give a couple of comments, see a couple of comments there. Michael, thank you for the one on pricing, 35% profit increase. Nice. Brittany, thank you for the shout out there on the on the pricing for profit book. That's awesome.
Yeah, and then I think we've got a question from Gordon too. Go ahead, Gordon.
Thanks. Yeah, so being the maker that's avoiding advertising, uh, what form of marketing, or how would you establish to stand by? Let me rephrase. How would you appropriately target your first marketing campaign?
Mm.
And is there a certain platform you might engage?
I'm really just going to go back to that beginning of the presentation there where I was talking about, understanding yourself, right? Like what strengths and weaknesses you have and who your target market is. It's really super dependent on those two things. And understanding those is going to be, what unique capabilities do you have? I'll give you an example. I was talking to an entrepreneur a number of months ago, and we were talking about they were getting ready to launch a new company, and that brand, he was so fixated on advertising through Instagram because that's what he'd heard. And we had a 1 or 2 hour conversation, quite a long conversation, and it wasn't until the very end where I kind of asked him, hey, what's your day job? And he said, oh, I'm an SEO specialist. And I was like, we've been talking for this long about, marketing and all these things, and you're an SEO specialist and you didn't mention doing SEO once in your marketing campaign. It's so easy to kind of like, it really depends. Like that's a unique character situation because he works in SEO, but it's easy to kind of like overlook sometimes your natural strengths that you might have. And you might have some really interesting connections or tactics that you could use as an individual that might be really effective for your marketplace or for your target. And it would be a process to kind of like go through and uncover what might be appropriate for you.
Can I further part of that question, James?
Yeah, love it.
Sweet. Um, so I was thinking about that, and like what I hear you saying is like use your brand as a filter, and filter and find the things that that you bring your best strengths to when it comes to marketing. What is the suggested tactic for finding like the marketing channel that your intended audience would most connect with or be most receptive to? Thank you.
So we have an exercise called the channels exercise, which is basically like looking at all the different channels that are available in the marketplace for you to go through, and then picking maybe like 4 or 5 channels that are most appropriate might be most appropriate for you. Bit of like, you know, kind of like saying, hey, this is where I think we should start doing some testing, and then testing in those areas and seeing what the response that comes back is. Because sometimes, you know, iteration is innovation. And sometimes a path that we go down isn't always the right thing to start. And that's normal. So we want to be able to try a few different areas, see what's working, and then be able to double down and build on what's working rather than just going like directly into one spot. And because we're always going to be learning and getting feedback along the way. Well, thanks, Brent.
Thanks.
All right. Any other questions out there?
Great, then. Thank you so much, James. That completes our webinar for this month. In April, we'll hear from Brett Price. He's the founder of AIQ Consulting Group, and he's going to explain how to put AI to work for your business. So mark your calendars for the next Core Outdoor Speaker Series. It's going to be Thursday, April 11th. And as always, the Core community will gather in person for the annual summit held at Kimberley Alpine Resort in Kimberley, BC. This year's dates are going to be October 5th and 6th. Oh, excuse me, October 4th and 5th. And registration will open in April. I'm going to go ahead and sign off then. Until next time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.